do we communicate better now than we did 35 years ago?
Well, apparently we found that question kind of funny. Welcome back to Ask Mom and Dad. We're going to carry on with how have we made it 35 years? Hope you enjoy this episode.
They say to us, well, she looked at Tonya and said, "You're married to your worst nightmare." And my wife didn't even laugh or disagree or fight for me at all. I just did what I just did now. I just kind of went, yeah, I mean, and then she looked at me and she said,
"How many years were you married at this point? 3?
This would have been 4 or 5.
4 years?
No. Hannah would be 4 years? No, wait a minute. How are you?
So at this point, you're well aware.
You're testing me to do date math.
I'm so sorry.
5 years married.
5 years somewhere.
So we were coming into the window of divorce, which is, 6 to 8 years.
That's what I've heard. I've heard if you make it past 3, you're going to be okay, but it's still going to be rocky for a while.
Well, so the rest of this story is important here because I want you to understand the difference of how much I love your mother versus how much she loves me, because she didn't fight for me or disagree with me or at all. And the woman looks at me and she says, "You must be frustrated all the time." And I said, no, I'm never frustrated. I don't know what you're talking about.
You did not say that.
I did not say
that. Were you in
No.
denial?
He looked right at me and said, "Well, this makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?"
Oh, gosh.
Oh, boy.
I think what was
The
so
follow-up
cool
question, how have
to
you been
me,
married to a liar for so many years?
No, what was cool to me was already God had confirmed that, again, what I said was I needed solid rock foundation that said this marriage is what God wants, not what I picked out or tried to figure out, because we wouldn't have made it that long. It was during our first child that I think I packed up a bag and walked around the house.
Don't tell that story. No, you didn't walk around the house.
We've talked about that.
Yeah, that's a good story.
We've said it before. I mean, there were several times I wanted to walk out. That time I actually did pack a bag and try to figure out how to take Josiah with me. That was interesting. But anyway.
She had this massive suitcase.
It's funny now, though.
And Josiah in one arm and the suitcase in the other. And she walked to the edge of the street. But it's your mom. So she always, I think you put the bag down and went back in the house or started to come back to the house because you always forget a bag. And
that's true.
She does. And but I tried to stop her and talk her into it, but she just finally left everything and took a walk around the house. I don't remember what we were fighting over. It was probably nothing important to us. Now we'd probably look back on it if we could. We can't remember what it was.
Well, the frustrations of difficulty. We were just talking about personalities and such. We are completely different opposites. Literally, he's off the scale according to what they tested him in one of our jobs.
Off the scale, like off his rocker? What does that mean?
Exactly.
The bus is backing up. I need a new sound effect.
I mean, I know that.
He's legitimately off the scale of extrovert and of I think it was trust or something. It was hilarious when they did that. But anyway, but here's me right on the other end of that somewhere, introvert and some specifics about the way life plays out, like modesty or, whatever. There's just so many different things that were quite exactly opposite. And we grew up in completely different. I was a rural small town girl. He grew up in Atlanta, or just right outside of Atlanta. He's adopted and into a kind of wealthier neighborhood kind of setting, and here is me who had my first job when I was 16, and that's so that I could get a car, whereas there's just so many different situations.
I was on my fifth job by the time I was 16. I want to be real clear about that. I was fired from the pool because I swam too much. I mean, you've already told everyone that I'm an extroverted, immodest individual from what you said. I was out there, and I'm just kidding.
You're the definition of immodest. I've been my whole life just like, I'm just kidding.
And my daughter just told everyone how traumatized she was by my immodest. I'm feeling
so immodest.
I'm
being sarcastic. I don't think you're.
Oh, it's okay.
Anyway, I think it was.
Obviously, we were just
I worked
different.
at the department store. I worked at a chicken place. I had 5 jobs by the time I was 16.
So
8 by the time I graduated high
what
school.
solidified our relationship was beyond us. That was the whole point of all of that. And I'm really thankful for it, because I think my way I grew up, the moral base that I believe, and the the God I serve says you are in this for life. There's no options here. And it was scary to me, and it was really hard. There were times where it was completely like, this isn't in the books, the rule book,
I'm starting
Now,
to think you identify
one of the
most with
things-
Hosea in the Bible.
No.
Yes, because
No,
Dad
because
was so
you
immodest.
I was going to say, you were faithful to me, or as far as I know, anyway.
I have been faithful. Don't let this record show that I have been faithful to my wife.
So you're the Hosea? And who's, never mind. Okay.
I
don't
hope
know.
Yes,
I'm-
because
I
Mom
hope
has
I'm
been
not the
so
Hosea.
immodest.
Just
Anyway,
okay.
We'll go back to.
And Jesus said, if you look upon a woman with lust in your eye. Okay, moving on.
I had good
Derailed.
example in my family, though, too, of two parents, or my parents, who weren't alike at all either. And they held together and worked hard at trying to keep a marriage together. Weren't afraid to fight a little bit in front of us, but never to a degree that scared me. That was one of the things I think we decided way up front, that if we were careful about our language and not breaking down each other, but not being
Yeah.
afraid to conflict and be okay with that being public.
Yeah, I think we
at
could
least.
do an entire podcast episode on how to fight, because I didn't know.
Yeah, I agree.
I didn't know how bad fights can be until I've heard other people fight. And as my children have gotten married, some of them have had some really rough goes of their initial connections and fighting. And I had no idea just how demoralizing and how terrible people. I mean, I knew what I saw in film, but
Yeah.
but I'm like, you and I, in the worst, I want to tell on you right now, the most demoralizing, painful thing that you have ever said to me was when you got so angry at me one time, you called me a creep.
Yeah, I remember.
I've said
you
this
that.
before.
I know I've said it before, but I'm going to say it over and
She
over and
keeps
over again because I
rolling her
never
eyes
want
at
you to
it.
forget. She rolls her eyes at it because it's funny to her now.
A creep is
She
Ow.
cussed. She cussed
I've
at me
also
once.
called you a
insult
jerk,
for Mom.
probably, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, but a jerk is not as terrible as a creep. I
Creep
mean,
is
Okay.
creep has
pretty
some
bad,
serious
huh?
connotations to it.
Okay.
and
I'm sorry.
I've only gotten you mad enough to pull out
No,
your
we
own
just
hair a
mean
few
coming
times that
from
I can
you.
think of. But the point of the matter I'm saying is because we are both of us are very strong in our own opinions about things. And we're talking about personality types. And she said that she's the opposite of me. So whereas I'm the extrovert and immodest, apparently, she's an introvert who has the ability to present an extrovert. In other words, an extrovert, by definition, my understanding of it, is someone who draws energy from being around people. Being in a room like this, just hanging out with folks, I'm charged, I'm ready to go. Mom's ready for a nap, usually by the time it's over with.
I was ready for a nap before we entered the room.
Yeah, well, you're a mother of a nearly newborn, so that makes all the sense in the world. You wake up and go, oh, is it nap time yet?
That's true.
But I always kind of looked at it, and we both have looked at it, that if you flip our profiles over and you put them together, we're like a puzzle piece. We fit. But the counselor that day, years ago, said it's going to be a lot of work. And I think that resides in the back of both of our consciousness, that it is work to be married to someone who is messed up, just like you are, but messed up opposite you are. We're a
Okay.
mirror image. I'm the upside down, for those of you who watch the whole Netflix series.
Stranger Things.
We are Stranger
I think,
Things.
yes,
You
we
and I
are.
are.
I think what is more telling, or I think what explains me a lot more, is I doubt myself. This whole, girl advising you that you should marry me because I'm insecure. I think it's more that I just don't understand enough, and I doubt my understanding. So in communicating, trying to get through what we're saying, I don't know who to doubt, me or you, in
Yeah.
the conversation. So that's been hard because we literally don't communicate the same. You read those books, Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus or whatever, there's language barriers between men and women already. There's understanding barriers. We see life completely different, opposite sides of the spectrum, literally, as we should. We've given that illustration of a mug that has the handle on the right hand side, and I'm holding it up to you, and you can swear, and literally, you're not lying to say it's on the left hand side to you.
Yeah.
It's truth from both perspectives. It's exactly truth, but whose truth, right?
Yeah.
Is the mug, is
absolute-
the
the
handle on the
absolute
right
truth
or
is
the
there is-
left? Well,
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
it's the truth.
And I think that
So-
illustration's always been good too, because it illustrates that we can be looking at something that is true. There's a mug on the table, but our perspective changes how that same thing is presenting itself.
And
It
how it's
doesn't
communicated.
deny the fact that there's a mug there. It just means that we're looking at it differently.
And a further of that same illustration would be I can see the picture on my side and you see the picture on your side, and we can convince each other or argue about what picture's actually there. Well, what we're seeing is still true to us, and it's right. Doesn't make it wrong. That's one thing I think that's been really valuable is I have learned, and it's really been a learning game for me, that neither one of us are right or wrong, literally almost in any conversation we have. We just are different, and we see it different, and our perspectives are completely different. So trying to help the other one see it, that's the trouble.
I think
That's the
I
thing,
figured out
the
what the most
difficulty.
difficult thing is in our marriage that we
Okay.
deal with. But I'm going to let someone ask us
All right,
that
isn't it
question
good that
later
we're
on.
answering these questions?
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
There you are.
What's the most difficult thing in your marriage? No.
Oh,
I mean,
I'm
that
so
wasn't
glad
going to
you
be
asked.
my question, but I'm ready to ask it.
Okay,
That's
cool.
fine.
Well, the reason I brought it up so it could be asked was it occurs to me that in the context that we're talking about, that probably the biggest thing that you struggle with in our marriage is the way we think about things differently, and not just the concepts, but the way we process information. And I process out loud, and every word that is said because it has a reason to be said. In other words, and this is how I've come to understand it.
Ways more concretely, every word
Yeah,
is a
well,
little more concrete.
Why would you say it if you don't mean it? So I
Right.
would say something to her that I haven't concluded yet. And
Yeah.
so by the time we finish the conversation, she's going, which decision are we making? You've given us 4.
Yeah.
Mike and I run into that same exact problem.
And so, but for Mom, it's like, why would you even say anything until you figured out what you're going to say? And I'm going, I am
Yeah.
figuring out what I say. I just can't, my mouth is participating in the process.
But
Is
it's
that right?
true.
Is that true?
Absolutely. And each time you've said something, I'm trying to adjust myself to that declaration, whatever it might be. Maybe we're talking about, you're kind of alluding to a decision we're needing to make, maybe a trip we're going to take or something like that. Well, each thing he says, I'm adjusting. Okay, that's fine. Now I just got to figure out how I'm going to do that, And then he changes it. Then we're going to do it this way. Wait a minute, you just said this. Now I got to adjust to that. And I had to learn that about myself. I'm still trying to do that. I still don't hear when
Yeah.
he's talking.
35 years later.
I don't necessarily hear, well, I haven't made that conclusion yet. I'm getting there. I can say out loud, oh, that's not the decision yet.
Yeah.
You're just
Well,
entertaining these thoughts, right?
But to this day, I figured out what is frustrating all the time. And it's not really frustrating all the time. It's just I've got to learn how to deal with it too. On the other side of that is I'm having a processing thing going on out loud, and you'll answer the first or second thing I've processed and engage yourself. And now you've confused me because you're another voice, and I'm already dealing with the one voice in my head. And I'm trying to say, no, wait, no.
There's two people in on the argument.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I realize at that point in time, Ohio is not the only place where things go off the rails. But yeah,
No, we already learned
I don't have my
this,
canned
then.
laughter out for that one.
What is it, Louisiana?
Alabama.
Oh, Alabama.
is where
It also
another
goes
one of
off the
those
rails in Alabama,
Same, I
apparently.
think it's the
My
same
goodness,
group. Yep.
yeah, that's
It's been the thing lately.
I think we need a new, pipeline or something to help
Not
with
that
that
this
problem.
is stuff to joke about. This is very serious, but also like,
Come on, people. So anyway, that's a thing. So I have to pause sometimes and realize, wait a minute, she thinks I'm here, but I'm here, and then we have to redirect. But we've had arguments because of those kinds of collisions. We've literally like cars trying to cross at crossroads without stop signs.
And then
just
we have
run into one
arguments
another.
trying to figure out what our argument's about.
Oh my gosh, we're the worst
That's
at that.
fun.
I can't believe. Well, the reason I think that we came to this point is because you thought this when I said this, and I was thinking that you were thinking about this, and so when you're
Don't
like,
you love that?
no,
in
it's like when a
sitcoms?
drink tastes disgusting to you because you're expecting it to be like Diet Dr. Pepper, and you drank Coke Zero, and you're like, this is the most disgusting thing I've ever drank. But in reality, it's not that bad.
I
You
just
just
think
weren't expecting Coke Zero.
I think it's funny because it's the thing of sitcoms. Always, they're arguing about something different each, and you love to laugh at people doing that, but that's true to life.
it's
And
scary.
whoever
true,
writes
so.
that is brilliant to me. Cause
Well, that's what good comedy is, right? Someone that's able to identify something and just push it a little
that's
further out of the
real,
envelope.
yeah.
And then you sit there and argue with the TV.
Entertaining.
We'll sit there and argue with the television too, because it's like, how do they do this? Why? And then later on, you don't realize you're doing exactly that yourself. I'm thinking,
I have another question.
all right,
We'll start. I don't know. We'll just point at somebody and start with it. how do you, or what is it that makes you feel valued? And what is your process when you don't feel valued by the other
My
person in your life?
process, I just made it sound like it was like so what is the process through which you work through these?
Well, yeah. How do you deal with that? What do you like? Do you confront? Do you?
How do I feel valued, or do you want me to? No, I'll
What
answer.
what makes you
I'm
feel?
not going to try
valued?
and tell you what she feels valued because that would reveal that we've been married a long time, and I don't really know. That's not true. I do know what makes you feel valued, I think.
So let me repeat the question. How do you feel valued? What makes you feel valued?
I know. Other question. I don't know.
We usually end up reflecting on like the love languages. Is that what you're referring to? Kind of where you get your most sensing the other one loves you or values you
Yeah.
in that way.
Well, for me, I think for me, it's communication a lot of times because when she tells me that I'm doing a good job or that she appreciates me. I mean, affirmation, communication. I love it
That
when
in that actual book by Gary Chapman, that would be words of affirmation.
yeah,
right?
words of
Do you-
affirmation. When you run your fingers through my hair now and again.
Okay,
Pretty good,
that's
too.
physical touch.
Yeah, I'm just a guy at that point. But no, being affirmed. I think words of affirmation is a big one for me. Don't you think, honey?
Yeah, it is.
I seem to respond the best to that.
I think for me, early on, and from most people that I interact with, it's usually been something like a quality time where you're felt valued, listened to, and then reacted and have good back and forth. But there are times where I think that's not been wonderful for us because
Right.
you're not as apt to be able to just sit and listen to me or hear me and and that's just because you're an out loud processor, and I've had to realize that, and that's difficult because I don't know exactly I don't know how to counter those emotions in me that react to you not hearing me, because I feel loved when I feel listened to, or like I'm listening to you. So then when you come back and haven't heard me or haven't heard me hear you, it's a spiral of, okay, I don't feel like I'm in the room or whatever. The other thing I think I've realized about myself is I'm a little bit more gift oriented than I ever thought I was, which is weird, and that may be later
Maybe
in
you've just
our
given up.
world.
You've
Yeah,
just
maybe I've given up on the listening thing.
Just given up on ever being heard. Just give me stuff. I'll be okay.
Well, legitimately with kids, and we have a bunch of them, I've tried to give that to them to hear and listen to them. By the time I'm done listening to them, I'm kind of tired, so I guess, and they don't have the time to listen to me, so let's move on to gifts. No,
Well,
I
and
don't
now
know.
you really are not dealing just with kids that are children. You're dealing with adult kids that call you and need to talk to you and work through those things.
And it does still make me feel valued. I was thinking in our relationship now, I think it's just that we need each other, that you tend to need me, even if it's just me being around, not necessarily like hand me a tool or, be a supportive thing for this while I'm fixing something, but literally just that, I'm there for you to bounce things off of or reflect things. That has made me feel like, well, good, it's worth it for me to be here. Because you need to bounce things off of me.
It is,
need
and I'm going
speak
to use an illustration. I mean, 35 years is not as long as many have been married. And
Right.
more
My
than
mom and dad have
more than a
passed.
lot have been married.
Yeah.
They're past the 45th now.
No, they're past 55, I think.
Are they really 55
I
years
think it's
married?
56 coming up or something.
Well, the thing that I point out, and it's kind of interesting, you bring your mom and dad up. My mom and dad also they were married to each other until he passed away when he was 54. And so I would say my mother had multiple husbands, but she was a widow, a young widow by what you and I currently would consider standards because we're now in that age range. But their generation stayed married. At least that's how, and I watched them fight, and I don't think it was always constructive. And I watched the way my mom dealt with things, but nonetheless, we both did have the advantage of having modeled for us endurance in marriage.
Yes, that's right.
You wanted to
My
comment?
my parents this year in this Christmas, so they just passed 57. They'll be up to 58, so not far from 60 years together. And yeah, that's exactly right.
But your mom was a little younger than mine, by about 10 years. And so your mom was more the hippie generation, as far as that generation. She wasn't that person, but they were they were teenagers and stuff. It was the 60s when you were born. So yes, they were. And so there was a lot of influence in her culture and upbringing that would encourage marriages not to survive. She was literally in that niche. Now she was in church. She was in a place where she was encouraged marriage, but the people all around them were falling.
Culturally,
the culture was losing it.
Yeah.
And your mom and dad. So we had that modeled for us. And I think that had a lot to do with it. And setting up what I was going to say caused me to lose what I was going to say. So, yeah.
We were exampled longevity of relationship. That's where you were going with that at first.
Yeah, it was an example of the longevity of the relationship. And I know what it was. The illustration that I was going to make was there's a point, I think, for you and I where I can remember 10 years ago even, when you left town or something, I'd call you every day. And we would, before texting, and it was an everyday phone call, it felt like we missed something if I didn't talk to you. And that seemed like something we had to work more at. Now with the kids gone and stuff, we still text every day. We still communicate every day when we're apart. But there's an absence there, kind of like you left your best pair of old shoes somewhere that you really want to have around you. You know, there's a sense of presence that you never get. We've been through a lot. I mean, we're worn out with each other together, and we're encouraged with each other together. There's been a lot of. What I'm trying to say is there's some favorite
old
things.
Pair of shoes. I would say.
Oh yes, you would. Look at me. Don't I look like an old pair of shoes?
Oh, honey, no. That's okay.
I would say more like a new pair of shoes.
you are without your. Well, it's literally people say kind of like an appendage. I really think you start kind of feeling like you're. I agree with you exactly. It feels like you're a presence that together you're separated out. You're not quite whole. You don't feel complete there. And it's not as if, because in our younger years, I could take a trip and I would miss you, but I'm me. You know, I can do this or do that. I remember going to Europe when I was young, and actually Micaiah was like 2 years, so I just weaned her and was able to go on my own. And I remember being with my sisters and my mom, and it was a fun time. But it felt much more independent, even though I missed all of my family. Felt much more independent than even this last time when I went across Europe with my kids. I felt like I was missing a part of me. I couldn't share it with you, even though you were kind to let me go without you, and you were sort of living it with us because we were trying to keep you involved in pictures and stuff. But it was much more. There was a hole there. I'm not quite all there myself.
Yeah, there was a point
being there,
was
which
a point
is
in the
weird,
relationship
and
where
I
you
don't
would be
know
like,
how to explain that. But
there was a point in the relationship I remember where you would be like, I'm with my family, and I have to behave differently. This is what I mean by the well. Hang on a second, just be patient with me and get to it. The well-worn. This is, I think, where the puzzle piece fits. We fit together. We're coming at it from different angles. There's a way when you're with your family that you are transitioning back to a way in which your family is together. We're not ourselves. We're just not who we are when we're just us. There's a way in which when we're together that we fit like a good old worn out pair of clothes, shoes, whatever, that it's just they're comfortable. We're comfortable together. And that's what I was trying to say in my terrible way of communicating that.
I don't know that, I wouldn't even say that it could be described as comfortable, but necessary.
Are you going to say we're uncomfortable together?
No, more like...
That's true. We are kind of awkward.
What I was trying to say that
Sorry.
I wouldn't say, yes, comfortable is right. I'm not saying that doesn't describe it. I'm saying it's more than that. It's more like I'm not the same unless you're there.
We're a part of
It's a completely different. Yeah. Well, I'm just saying that's true for growing together, because I think when you're young and you're married, you hope for those type of things, but you have to struggle and search and like, so you're like a rubber band, stretch as far apart as you possibly can, kind of rubber band back together occasionally, and it feels like you're exercising this sort of whatever it is. But I think as we've grown through all of that and we've experienced so much of life together, children and now grandchildren, and all these experiences add up to, I am with you these things. Without you, these things aren't me. It's just, you know what I'm saying? So
there's such an accumulation of life together that there is no real,
there's not
way
a
in which it
separation.
exists separated.
Yeah.
Which is weird because you're saying that, and I'm thinking, I don't know how anyone ever does it separately. Divorces, marriages fall
Yeah,
apart,
well,
and they figure
and-
out a way to do it. But
And you hear about it that they never quite get over it. It is a pain. That separation is a pain that never quite repairs itself. And I think that's what God says, why he says in the scriptures he hates divorce, because he watches that break.
Yeah, he doesn't hate
when
people
he
who
said,
get divorced. He hates what
man
divorce
may not
does.
put asunder. Yeah. But when he says what God has joined together, man may not put asunder, meaning man can't divide it. God's already joined it. That's why I say, get back to what we started with, you can't take even sexual experiences as a just separate carnal thing. It is so much of a soul thing. And I wish people knew that, because that's what causes their brokenness later on in life. When they've got all of these added up experiences that they can't share with one person, it's just broken their soul. So once they've been able to put that back together, maybe with a solid marriage or a solid, relationship with Jesus, there are healings that have to happen. No wonder our society breaks down in so many areas. This, I think most of all, even just on the forefront of our thoughts lately have been abortion, but how let's put this responsibility, this added appendage of our own or whatever aside, and let's just destroy it because we can go on and ignore the things that has happened in our soul. You can't do that. You cannot separate who you are from the spiritual nature of who you are, and eventually you get that, right in your face with whatever ways. And I'm just saying, thank the Lord for things that he has taught us early. Thank you, God, for childhood faith that directs your thinking and your decision making, because I believe that's why we are where we are and why we value the things we do, and why I believe that it would take a lot to separate us. We could still definitely end up there because we're carnal just like everyone else. I mean, we live on this earth and are susceptible to temptation just like anyone else, but he has put some strong bonds there and strong guardians of our heart and our soul to keep us on the straight and narrow in a sense, and to know what's valuable. And that's heavy. That's big. That's eternal.
All right, I have one more question, then we'll wrap this up. We've been at it for a little while. Maybe we'll split it into two. But let me just say one thing. Do we communicate better now than we did 35 years ago?
I think so. I think that we communicate unwrittenly better. I think there's an
unwritten agreement that we communicate better whether we don't.
Whatever I'm trying to say. Yeah.
No.
There's
I asked that
sort
question
of
knowing you'd answer that.
Yeah. I don't think we do. I think language is still a barrier. Our thought processes maybe even more frustrating. I talk to my mother about this once in a while. I don't think you ever get much better at that. You're still the same people. You're still the same type of, but you do kind of get each other better. So there's unwritten or unspoken.
That's what you're calling it?
Yeah, in a sense, there's some unspoken bond communication that's happening, even at the time that your words aren't making any sense, or you're not able to, speak the same language. Like you and I can talk about something. Well, for instance, these podcasts, we can talk through something because we understand each other and have talked maybe these categories of subject matter, often. We know kind of how the other one thinks, but it's fun to listen. And in this environment, we'll actually listen better.
Well,
when we're going about our merry way and you've working on something on the computer and I'm over here, knitting or something. If you say something, first of all, our hearing's bad, so we might not even hear what the other one's asking or saying. Also,
I hear fine.
Also, we can't, if we don't hear the whole thing, we might jump to conclusions like we did when we were young, but there's always kind of a measure of it's come up to this level of misunderstanding. We can go on from it a lot faster.
A good
easier.
Example to
doesn't
me,
hurt each other quite as quickly.
Yeah, I think a good example of how we don't communicate any better now than we did before, to put it in a larger thing, is you'll always, and I find it interesting because we have this conversation, I'll always counter you with, well, no, I think we're looking at this from a different angle. You'll always go, no, I disagree. And what I'm saying by that is, and I did that backwards. Usually you'll say, no, I disagree. And then as I listen to your disagreement, I'll go, no, I think I was trying to say that wrongly. In other words, we work at finding common ground. In the beginning of it, we may not connect. And I think when we were younger, my answer to that would be to say, no, Tonya, I disagree. I think we do communicate better now. than we did
I gotcha.
35 years ago. Because I have, and I think what you're calling unwritten, I would call, we have patience with one another that we've grown to have over the years. And
Maybe so.
it doesn't
I
always
think-
look like patience in the initial
it's
blow
funny.
up sometimes, because sometimes there's a blow up. But when there's
Yeah.
not a blow up, sometimes it's like, wait a minute, let's work through this. And you're like, I can't do that right now. Let me go get my head on straight.
Well, it's funny to me because I don't think there's even more patience. Sometimes I think there's less, but it's about different
we
things.
just don't communicate.
No. I'm saying the patience we have is with different things.
Okay.
I don't have patience with understanding what I'm even trying to tell you now, but it's not really toward you. It used to be that I was not as patient with wanting to hear because I was so frustrated by, trying to tell you something. Now I don't understand what I'm even trying to say or how I'm going to get you to hear what I'm trying to
confusing
say.
you so badly that you can no longer. So now I just basically have abused you into submission.
What I'm trying to say is I think we're impatient with our own flaws. Our physical flaws cause us more impatience these days. Like, like I said, not being able to hear something or being able to. So it means that there's less levity to it. There's less depth to our impatience. So we have more patience with actually each other or actually trying to understand what the other one's saying, believing that we really do see and understand each other better. So yes, but
So
I mean,
I guess this
I
brings us
lose
to the-
patience and, I'm fumbling something or I'm whatever more now than I did, but I don't lose as much as easily. I don't doubt as quickly that we're on the same page, but we're just not communicating it well.
Okay, so that's
what
what I
I'm
mean by
trying to say.
patience right
Yeah.
there. You're not as quick to doubt that we're trying that there's something there. Because I was going to say the follow up question for those people who are out there listening, going, why are they still married? Is why are we still married? That's the follow up
Right.
question. So let's wrap up with that question. Why are we still married? Marred. Why are we still married?
Okay.
Wrap it up with
Again,
that one.
what
I
I
know-
said
Well,
earlier
I know that.
was
Package it.
yeah, what
tightly.
I believe is because that's what God is. He's faithful. He doesn't leave us. He doesn't abandon us when there are confusions or miscommunications or when we feel abandoned. Even He's still there. I think that's our example to the world is that we'll be patient with each other. There'll be faithfulness because He is faithful. And it's, again, I believe only by His grace that we can get through whatever brings today's difficulties to tomorrow, and there's no reason to start over again. I used to hear
It's
that.
a lot of work trying to
joke.
train me or another me out there. Let me wrap up
No.
with this one thing. Job said something wise. I know but a lot of people don't get through Job, but I don't know if you knew this, but the 35th wedding anniversary is what's the gem or you know what it is?
Nope.
The gem is the green one, emerald. Mm-hmm. But the
That's
I
my
know
birthstone,
it's your
too.
birthstone, right? But the color is coral. The traditional gift is coral. And I found this in the scripture this morning, and I think it's worth mentioning. Coral and quartz are not worth mentioning. It's not worth mentioning. It's
In
worth
Job.
mentioning this.
Okay.
The price of wisdom is beyond pearls. And what you just said, and what I think we should wrap up with today is just that. What I have in you is a wise woman. I can't say anymore. And I'm grateful.
Well,
I'm grateful to God for that.
And I think you've heard me say many a times, I wouldn't still be married to you had God not shown me your wisdom early on, and knowing that that's what I wanted for my children. So I wouldn't choose to be with someone else because I believe the wisdom you have walked with Jesus and given a gift you've been given, and you can see it in your gray hair. That's a promise of Scripture as well.
Leakage.
That God has given you wisdom. That has passed on to my children, and that's what I see in them, a reflection of you. I also believe that we're married because I wouldn't want to do that to them, and I will give up myself and my desires before I want to sacrifice what they need, and they need you as much as they need me.
That means a lot to me. Thank you for wrapping that up. And as anniversary present, is anything. And with that being said, we're wrapping this up, and we'll call this the end of one. Maybe we'll figure a place to split this into two. It's been a long conversation, and we could go on and on about how much we love one another, because clearly we do. We don't understand
Or at
one
least we're
another,
entertained.
but we love one another. Thanks so much for listening to Ask Mom and Dad. We'll do this again. Take care.
Keep on